VigilanteWilliamson here with a very simple question, concept, conversation about Ghost of Yotei, the Ghost of Tsushima sequel, the Godot engine, and wokeness, aka cultural Marxism, and anti-wokeness, the criticism of it, which can get grifty. Both sides can, and just I guess the culture war in general, at least where I stand with it. And for those who don't know, this is the first time watching, thanks, like, sub, all that stuff. But, this channel started off being very critical of cultural Marxism as it related to media and entertainment. And eventually that conversation, I'm not saying is one that shouldn't still be held. I still hold it occasionally, but it just became too limiting and too boring and too obnoxious. I'm not going to keep focused on things that I don't like, right? The world is too big. Life is too short to focus on stuff that you don't like. I'm not saying what other people should do. That's their business. If they want to continue to focus on content based upon content that isn't good and content that they don't like because it's cultural Marxism, and if you want to get caught up in the quote-unquote culture war, that's become less relevant to me. It's just as a concept. I'm not saying it doesn't exist or there's no relevance at all, but just it doesn't matter to me. Life is too short. There are other things to focus on that to me are more important. And plus, as I've covered, and hopefully I'll clip it out, the oligarchy that is the corporation runs things. So worrying about the politics of things is actually minutia in the grand scheme of things. All that notwithstanding, even though this video is about 3 different subjects, they all have the through line of wokeness and is it woke or will it be woke or whatnot. In Godot's case, yeah, we see some wokeness from the community manager. And if you don't know what Godot is, it's a game engine. I made a video about it when Unity, which is also a game engine, a much more popular engine, had some really weird and really basically corrupt terms of service changes earlier in the year. Maybe it's been last year. It's been a while. And I recommended Godot. I actually made a Android game in Godot years ago. And Godot, I don't know if it's Godot or Godot. I'm going with Godot. I made an Android game. I actually want to make games again. It's an open source engine. You can do a lot with it, and I think something like that should be encouraged. You know what I mean? But it looks like the community manager got into a little bit of a thing, talking about woke dough or something, and encouraging people to share their woke games that they made in Godot. And when people said, hey, just keep it to politics, they got banned. And it got so bad that the developers of Godot and the actual team had to kind of have an apology, semi-apology. They said that there were people who were attacking the community manager and then people who got banned who didn't attack the community manager. But what constitutes as an attack, I don't know. I'm sure there was some legitimately, angry and probably crossing the line sort of language, but you can make a strong argument that the community manager's language did that first, especially when people are probably tired of this culture war thing. It's not 2020 anymore. It's not 2018 anymore. It's now 2024. And so the whole thing has become old hat to a lot of people. It was, to me, that's why my format kind of changed and became more, stream oriented and whatnot, or game stream oriented. So, I can understand what people in this case just, listen, I just want to make games. What does this have to do with making games? I don't think people want to see a right wing quote unquote game engine. The past few years have shown us that really partisan based entertainment is terrible, right? Not just all this cultural Marxist leftist. And by the way, that's what woke means, cultural Marxism. I see somehow more experienced people in this space who actively are on one side of culture war, actively using the word woke, don't know how to define the fucking word. It's very simple. Cultural Marxism, that's what it is. It is cultural Marxism. What is cultural Marxism? It purports and I know I'm being exhaustive for people who already know, but sometimes it's necessary. Everybody doesn't know everything, and I don't want to make that mistake assuming you know. So cultural Marxism it assumes a societal hierarchy based upon gender and race and sexual orientation, amongst other factors. I think weight can even be one of them, and seeks to reverse said hierarchy by featuring these groups, the most quote unquote marginalized group that will be at the bottom of the hierarchy is the one pushed the most. That's why there's so many jokes in maybe the anti-woke space and probably now in the normie space about lesbian women of color, because intersectionally, and that's another word that gets used, a lesbian has, and I don't know how the scale really works, but the more things the wrong, quote unquote, I don't want to say the wrong, the more things attributed to a person, the quote unquote better or worse, the worse in society, the better for the cultural Marxist view. So a lesbian woman of color is shown as a protagonist because she's a lesbian, she's a woman, and she's a non-Caucasian in a Caucasian society. Therefore, she needs to be celebrated and pushed. And I think the real issue for most people is when it affects the end product. In the case of this Godot situation, hey, you're going to cause a culture war distraction for people who are just learning how to make games and trying to use your engine to make games, therefore allowing game development to grow despite any cultural or political or any bounds. When you talk about a free game engine, and you want that community base to be as huge as it possibly can, and you want as many people learning about it, you don't want to be focused on politics. You don't want to gatekeep based upon that. Obviously, you want people who are cordial and respectful, and I'm not sure how the communities are on Discord. It may be, and it looks like when I look through some of the comments on some of the videos when doing research on this, that some of those are hostile towards super far leftists, that even individuals who may have some similar leanings can find issue if they're not super far and super hardcore about it on some of those spaces. Some may say, hey, that's just the nature of Reddit and Discord, because those are the spaces in particular. But that's the thing, right? But again, it's becoming more and more ubiquitous for people. Just get it out. I don't want to necessarily see an opposite right wing view, a Daily Wire Snow White, or a quote unquote woke Snow White. Don't do either. Just make a Snow White. You know what I mean? Or in this case, just make Godot engine. Or I don't care. I don't want to be in a culture war. I don't want to be. I just want to make games. Similar thing with this Ghost of Yotei thing, though I have a little bit of a different view. I guess there is a shared view. I'll get to it in a second. Where with Godot, in that I want to give both a chance. It looks like with Godot is just some community management stuff. I don't think it's going to affect the engine. I don't want them to not focus on improving the engine because they're focused on community stuff. And in the case of Ghost of Yotei, where there's a female protagonist, and the real issue seems to be the voice actor. Let me get her name. It's Erika Ishii. Shout out to Tomohiro Ishii of New Japan fame. Sorry. But Erika Ishii, she may, I don't think may is even the right word. It looks like she does have some leftist leanings, and she does make that a huge part of her online presence. That said, I'm not sure if that's going to leak into the game. I get it. I know some people I just lost. Oh my God. Listen, Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best games the past 20 years. They have more leeway than I would give another studio. Listen, earlier this year, you could check out the streams. And toward the end of last year, I played Spider-Man 1 or Marvel Spider-Man 1 and then Spider-Man 2. And all I did is bitch about the wokeness in both games. I was actually madder about Spider-Man 1 because, to quote future Diddy, Jay-Z, they didn't really appreciate it until the second one came out. The first game is plenty woke, but you didn't really hear that narrative until the second one came out. And so I really wish the first one had got a little more heat for how woke it is. All those Mary Jane missions was terrible. I complained about it the whole process. I don't want wokeness in games as much as the next one, but Ghost of Tsushima, they earned my benefit of the doubt. Sucker Punch earned my benefit of the doubt, at least to be cautious. Now, don't get me wrong. I am going to keep my ear to the street. I am going to try to get whether or not this game is woke. The voice actor in and of herself does scare me a little, but I'm not going to go totally off the deep end. If we start hearing Sweet Baby Inc. is involved, if you don't know, that's a company that extorts game companies. but alleges to write more diverse material or DEI material that also goes along with cultural Marxism. What is it? Diversity, equity, and I don't know is it intelligence? I don't know, but it's supposed to be diversity, equity. It basically, again, taking these groups that are quote unquote marginalized by society and putting them at the forefront. Everything else be damned. Quality of product be damned. Qualifications be damned. And that's the sort of thing you don't want. You just want good products. You just want good games. You just want good movies, TV shows, whatever the hell is being produced, game engines. And you just want to be able to do that in a non-political space. You know, we can't get political on our streams. We talk about whatever on the streams, right? But I'm not shying away from politics per se, but I just don't have that same interest. I don't have that interest, and I don't necessarily think the conversation is helpful. I really, you know, despite leaning a little bit right, if I had to pick a side, if you forced me to pick a side, probably still lean a little bit right. Man, I've been very critical of the right, of the anti-woke, because not necessarily because I disagree with them ideologically, but man, it's just how many times can you talk about something you hate? And that's where I'm at with this. But at the same time, you don't want to ignore the reality. You don't want to ignore the reality that this has infested a lot of development studios of different mediums, whether it's movies, TVs, games, and usually it's a symptom of a greater issue, which is usually incompetence by that studio or by that development company, depending on the property. So it usually means we're making this woke so we can't be criticized based upon making something bad. We saw a lot of that with the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League game, where there was a lot of issues, not just the quote unquote woke elements, even some PDF file issues with that game. But any criticism was deflected as, oh, this is a, you know, I don't know, it's a bigot or whatever sort of thing. And that's another issue with cultural Marxism wokeness. I want to define that because, again, I'm very critical of the right. The grifter is an apt term for a lot of people on the right. They only care about clout. They don't really want things to change. In the same way CNN wants Trump to win so they have something to complain about, the people in the grifter class of the quote unquote anti-woke, they want more woke material to be produced. So they have more to complain about, so they can get you to sign up for their Patreon and get you to sign up for whatever sponsors they got going. They don't really care. And that was a big criticism. And they want to focus on minutia and basically be the marketing team for some of these properties. And in some cases, if they do get a check, they may be a little bit more loose or less critical of certain properties. So those were my issues with a lot of anti-woke, and those are still my issues with it. And again, the clout thing, and that's a whole social media wide issue. It's not just in this anti-woke space, but once these people start getting clout, it goes to their head. I'm worried about that happening with this channel. That's why it's a good thing I make 15-minute videos every like 8 months. And my channel's not growing, so it's not gonna go to my head because I couldn't. But seriously, like, you know, that's a huge issue with the criticism of a lot of this property. You can't tell if it's genuine. I couldn't tell why Concord was woke. I couldn't tell you why Concord was woke. I know that it failed. I know that it was a Overwatch clone, maybe a decade too late. But I don't know what made it woke. I just, you know, I didn't really hear about it until it failed. Maybe it wasn't marketed that well. I don't know. I mean, I guess I saw some of the models of some of the characters, and they do fit that cultural Marxist view. You know, obese, nondescript brown or black woman with a head shaved. That's kind of a tropey thing. But you know, the material was just, here's these thumbnails, it's woke, and here's a 15-minute video that doesn't get to the point. Wait, I just made a 15-minute video that hopefully gets to the point quick, and then it expands upon it over the course. We'll see. But yeah, I'm in a weird place. I started this channel off being critical of that sort of thing. I do think there is a place for it, but you know, everything balances all things should be. I don't necessarily think that's something to lead with, but these properties are still getting made. At the same time, you don't want to see ghosts. Ghost of Tsushima pun not intended, but just because there's a female protagonist in that game doesn't mean it's going to be woke. And if you had the lens to look for wokeness and to look for cultural Marxism and look for DEI, you might look at a classic game like Metal Gear Solid 3, where one of the villains, Volgin, is a bisexual man, where the main villain, the boss, is basically the protagonist of the game because she makes a sacrifice. She basically sacrifices her life. It's in the damn theme song. I give my life not for honor but for you. And she sacrifices her life basically for the charade of the United States. And that's revealed at the end, has one of the most emotional, powerful scenes in gaming history. But you may look at this, and she constantly betters the male Snake throughout the whole game. If you look through it through this lens of everything's woke, and you would miss out on one of the best video games of all time. You would not have one of the best video games of all time. That's one of the things that gets lost. I mean, some people, and I'm going to expand upon it, hopefully we can get this video under 20 minutes. I've seen people say, I can't watch a Robert De Niro movie anymore because of, I guess, his political views. I don't even know what they are, to be honest. I don't really care. I didn't go to Robert De Niro for political pundency. But there are people who really feel this way. And it's like, I don't really care that much about politics to throw out an entire career over what his politics may be. Now, I may not watch any new material, and plus he's getting a little long in the tooth anyway, so it's not like I was checking for a new De Niro movie. But I'm not about to throw out Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and Godfather. It was Godfather Part 2 and all these other incredible movies, Heat, all because you don't like what he says. It's crazy. Similar thing happened with my guy Bruce Timm, who maybe he's another cultural Marxist leftist, maybe that's his thing, but I'm not about to throw out the Tim verse or BTAS, Batman the Animated Series, SCAS, which is Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, all this great material because he made this weird Caped Crusader show with female Penguin and stuff. I'm not going to throw it out. I may not check for his new material, but the material he made is already good. But there's some people that they'll throw it out because the politics don't align. I don't want to get that extreme. I don't want cultural Marxist bullshit in my media, but I'm not trying to get so extreme that if the person doesn't politically agree with me, or if they make media to keep up with the times, to be on the quote unquote right side of history and be politically convenient and expedient, I'm not going to throw out their past material. And that's just how I am. And that's how I am with the whole thing. I'm not about to throw out Ghost of Yotei or Yotei. I know I butchered the pronunciation throughout the video. Just at the first sign of trouble because of how strong that first game was. It was such a strong experience. I'm not going to throw it out yet. I am cautious. I don't have to get the money. By the time the game releases, I'll know what's up. And if it's shitty, and if the word is it's going to be a woke nightmare, I'm not going to pick it up. It's that simple. But I don't have to get too invested in it. You know what I mean? I don't have to get too invested. I don't have to, panic. And same with Godot. That engine has too much potential. Now, if we see a pattern, in which apparently there is a little bit of a pattern, if you're in the community of Godot for some of this stuff, I can see how that's troubling. But as long as the engine stays tacked and that pattern doesn't get too extreme, and hey, Godot did have some contrition about the people who got banned on Twitter. So as long as the source stays good, I don't care who they vote for, what they do, and what they push and all the flags. This very program I'm using, Reaper, had a Black Lives Matter thing back in 2020. Back then I was really into this little culture war shit. So I wrote like some letter or email. It never got read. I kept using Reaper. And I got other criticisms of Reaper besides that. But I just kept using it because it's the most convenient to one I know, which is probably why I'm going to keep using it in general. That notwithstanding, do politics and entertainment matter? Yes. Do politics and other avenues matter? Yes. But the goal is not to necessarily have the creation match my political viewpoint per se. I just want apolitical entertainment, apolitical game engine case of Godot. I don't want it to be quote unquote right wing or slightly right or anything. Just don't muddy the water. So I've rambled for 20 minutes. Y'all can tell me what you think if you made it through this video. I appreciate y'all being here. Peace.